And now I find that some of my Republican colleagues are very distressed. They're very upset that somebody who's making 10, 12 bucks an hour might end up with a paycheck for 4 months more than they received last week. Oh my God, the universe is collapsing. Imagine that. Somebody who's making 12 bucks an hour, now like the rest of us, faces an unprecedented economic crisis with the 600 bucks on top of their regular unemployment check, might be making a few bucks more for 4 months. Oh my word! Will the universe survive? How absurd and wrong is that? What kind of value system is that? Meanwhile, these very same folks had no problem a couple of years ago voting for $1 trillion in tax breaks for billionaires and large profitable corporations. Not a problem. But when it comes to low-income workers in the midst of a terrible crisis, maybe some of them earning or having more money than they previously made, oh my word, we got to strip that out. Got to tell those poor people that no matter what. And by the way, when the McConnell bill first came up, unbelievably, and I know many Republicans objected to this, they were saying that, well, we want to give whatever it was, $1,000 or $1,200, but poor people should get less. You see, because poor people are down here, they don't deserve, they don't eat, they don't pay rent, they don't go to the doctor, they're somehow inferior because they're poor, we're going to give them less. Well, that was addressed. Now everybody is going to get the $1,200. But some of my Republican friends still have not given up on the need to punish the poor and working people. You haven't raised the minimum wage in 10 years. Minimum wage should be at least 15 bucks an hour. You haven't done that. You've cut program after program after program, and now, horror of horrors, for 4 months, workers might be earning a few bucks more than they otherwise went. Well,
what you just saw there wasn't just Bernie Sanders giving a killer speech on the Senate floor. It was also Bernie Sanders single-handedly saving the coronavirus stimulus package. In fact, even David Schuster jumping in on it to say that I'm certain that the mainstream media would never give due credit to Bernie Sanders, but let's be clear about one thing. It was Senator Sanders' threat to put a hold on the entire bill over the corporate money that turned around those GOP senators who were complaining about an unemployment provision. So if you weren't following the negotiations from yesterday closely, what was going on was that Bernie Sanders had threatened to put a hold on the entire stimulus bill over the fact that a few United States senators, Lindsey Graham, Ben Sasse, and Tim Scott, were threatening to gut an unemployment worker protection provision because they were worried about the fact that maybe possibly sort of kind of, it could lead to a situation where a few workers could have been making a few more bucks than they would have been otherwise. And so they were like, we need to gut this worker protection provision and, basically move forward with the bill with only the corporate money and then the direct checks, but, gut some of the worker protection provisions. Bernie Sanders said, whoa, hold on. If you're going to do that, then I'm going to hold up this bill over the fact that there's a $500 billion slush fund for large corporate money, for large corporate donors. He calls it $500 billion of corporate welfare. And he says, you know what? I'm going to put a hold on this entire bill. I'm going to put a hold on the corporate money if you're going to try to gut this worker protection provision. And by the way, guys, this was a serious act of bravery on the part of Bernie Sanders. Because if you actually look here at the Dow Jones Industrial Average for yesterday, you can see here that it was going up, as the news was coming out, that it looked like a bill, it looked like, some kind of deal was going to be reached for stimulus. And then right here towards the end, right before the markets closed, they absolutely tanked as Bernie Sanders announced that he would be, possibly blocking the bill if those senators weren't going to move. And guess what? If you were on Twitter at the time, if you were following what was going on and what people were saying at the time, Resistance Twitter, Resistance Anti-Bernie DNC was freaking out at the time. They were like, oh my gosh, Bernie, how could you do this? Just let the Republicans gut the worker protections. It's okay. We just got to stimulate the economy. Don't worry about the workers. Just screw over the workers. Let the Republicans have their way. But Bernie Sanders said no, and Bernie Sanders stood his ground. And you know what? It turns out that that's what you need to do. You need to have bravery in order to be a leader. And that's what Bernie Sanders showed yesterday. And it's what Bernie Sanders has been showing his entire life. And it's why Bernie Sanders was able to successfully get this thing through. Because it turns out you put the corporate money on, you hold the corporate money hostage, and suddenly, immediately, the Republicans rolled over. Immediately. As soon as Bernie Sanders put the corporate money on hold, all of a sudden, Lindsey Graham, Ben Sasse, Tim Scott, all of a sudden, okay, whatever, have the worker protection provision, whatever. That's what it took. And even, by the way, centrist Democrat, former centrist senator who was a Democrat said, Heidi Heitkamp says, I may not always agree with Bernie Sanders, but this is Bernie Sanders at his best. You go, my friend. So even the DNC, even some of the anti-Bernie Democrats are having to acknowledge here that Bernie Sanders really saved the day yesterday. I mean, this was a true act of bravery. This was an act of courage. And Bernie Sanders being willing to stand up to the corporations to say, you know what? Fine. If you want to gut the worker protection provisions, then I'm going to put $500 billion hostage. That's what was necessary in order to protect the workers, and it was what Bernie Sanders did yesterday. And quite frankly, yesterday, Bernie Sanders saved the day. That's the headline. So anyway, if you liked the video, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button and consider subscribing. Thanks.